Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sports Card Madness brought to you by DraftKings and their app Pick Six. Sign up with code Madness6 for up to $50 in free credits. This is LZ. I am here with Nick. Today on the show, we are switching it up. We have Roman Sharf, CEO of Luxury Bazaar. He is a big time watch expert and a dealer. He's a YouTube star. He's got a great YouTube channel. He actually has an online magazine, and he is a self-proclaimed degenerate collector. So we're going to get into all of that with Roman. And really, Nick and I have been talking, especially recently, about diversifying our collection. We've been a bit annoyed with some of the things that were going on in the sports card collecting hobby. And we've been throwing around the idea of we should get into watch collecting and a few other things. And I think Roman is really going to help us out, the audience out today. Roman, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. I am very excited about this because I really want to kind of get into I just want to diversify. I just want to diversify. And I'm hoping, Roman, you
The
can
audience
open
does
your eyes
too.
today.
You
Yeah,
know,
they
like
do.
they ask us all the time
Well, I'm
about
gonna,
different
I'm
assets.
gonna, I hate to be Debbie Downer. The first thing I'm gonna tell you before getting into watches, put on some bulletproof underwear and have a sense of humor. It's A, an expensive hobby. B, it's a slippery slope, like with anything else, be it card
Yeah.
collecting, memorabilia collecting, etc. And it's a tough place to be in unless you have some knowledge. I learned that the hard way with card collecting, for example,
Mhm.
and the many watch collectors learn it the hard way when they first get into watches. And I give everybody one advice. I tell them two things. Number one, watches are not an investment, they're an expensive toy, first and foremost.
Mm,
And number
Okay.
two, buy what you like, first and foremost, within the
Mhm.
price that you can afford, right? But there are exceptions to the rule, as with anything else. Same as in the card world, there's going to be
Yep.
cards that are going to be those blue chips that over time will gain value,
yep.
or at least not lose value. But if you don't lose value on something that you bought that is expensive, consider yourself a winner, as they say.
Hey,
It's
Nick,
also
doesn't this
the,
all sound very familiar?
It sure does. It
Doesn't it
seems like
all
good.
sound
It's
very
like good
familiar?
advice for any collector, from Legos
Yes.
to to
Yeah.
watches
well,
To
look,
to.
look at,
lunchboxes, to
but if
whatever
you
it
want to
is.
talk about cards, think about your in and out cost with your cards
Mm.
versus your in and out cost with watches, right?
Oh yeah,
The difference between the two worlds is going to be liquidity. It's very easy to liquidate a card, right?
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
eBay, a
Sure.
multitude of apps now where you can, at a click of a button, list your card, sell it, and the fees are somewhat nominal. If you look at
Mm.
eBay fees,
Yeah.
if you look at any of the other major platforms, right? What they charge you pennies. When it comes to watches, it's not as easy as taking a picture, slapping it onto eBay, and buying it. With watches comes, how do you ship an expensive watch? How do you insure that? How do you take a credit card? How do you do all those things? So what do you normally do? You'll come to a guy like me and say, hey, Roman, sell my watch for me. Well, a guy like me works on a margin anywhere from 10 to 20%. There's your in and
Sure.
out, right?
Hmm.
yep,
And there's a lot more guys out there buying cars than there are 50,000 guys buying $50,000 watches. So you have to
Sure.
take that
makes
into
sense.
consideration.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
wild.
All right. Well, let's get into just watches in general. Like, how did you get into watches? Like, tell us the story, like where it began. Did you love them as a child and you just got into it? We're all just curious about that.
So let's go back really quick. When I
Mm.
came to this country in 1988, I was 13 years old. I came here as a refugee. My father had $4 in his pocket, and I grew up in an apartment smaller than my office. And so I was poor, right? And I worked every day of my life since the day I landed here back in 1988. Joined the army, got out of the army, went to school, uh, came out of school, got a great job. My last job led me at Deutsche Bank. By the time I was 26, I was a VP at Deutsche Bank, and I was making a six-figure salary. And that's, what do you do when you come from nothing and all of a sudden, oh my God, you want to spend that money? You get that new money and you're like, okay, I want luxury things. That's what people tend to gravitate towards without
Hmm.
losing their heads, right?
Hmm.
I go out, I'll buy my very first Rolex. I paid $1,000 to a buddy of mine that owned a pawn shop in Atlantic City. It was an old Datejust. And my Rolex walked into the room 5 minutes before I did because it was like, hey, everybody, look, I have a Rolex, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's sort of that new money disease that you get when you make a little bit of money. While in the banking industry, I had a gentleman, and my background is electrical engineering and computer science, right? So I used to
Wow.
write programs. Of course,
Okay.
it's not like it's today with ChatGPT. It was, more of like a, black and white screen, but whatever.
Hmm.
Uh, Gentleman approaches me, goes, Roman, all this computer stuff. And I'm like, bit of a fucking understatement. I'm like, I manage global and local payment system for Deutsche Bank to the tune of $42 billion a month across 4 data centers that said 80 million in hardware. But yeah, I know a thing or two about computers.
Sure, just a little
So
bit.
he's like, well, this eBay thing started, and and I bought watches from this gentleman before. He was a gray market dealer working out of his house. It's like, why don't I give you a bunch of my stuff, take it, list it, here's your cost, and you make a profit. I said, it will never work. Who the hell's going to buy $10,000 watches on eBay? Right? This is when eBay just started, right? E-commerce was just being born. My wife, baby, I think it's a good idea. Let's give it a try. Mind you, I'm commuting to New York 2 hours each way every day. I have a demanding job. I run a team of guys out of Singapore, which are 12 hours apart from me. And on top of that, my wife was pregnant with my son, and I'm like, oh, I got to do this part-time. I did it for 3 years. I slept an average of 1 hour every month or so. And it took off. To my surprise, it took off. 2.5 years later, I found myself at a crossroads where I actually continued. Now, mind you, my bank career was thriving at the time. Unfortunately, post 9/11, I was there on 9/11. Our office was World Trade Center 4. I made a name for myself. So my career was getting ready to take off at the bank. But yet at the same token, my business was now making me 1.5 times what I was making at the bank. And I found myself at a crossroads. There was a big layoff at the bank. They let go of like 10% of the company when the market took a dip. And I was like, I don't know if I want this to be me, right? I don't want to be the guy who was here for 20 years. And then a corporate decision, which I don't blame him for, was made. And all of a sudden, every other guy on my floor got up and left. So I chose to go the other way. And as they say, the rest is history, from eBay to now my own website. And lo and behold, we're a $120 million business a year.
Wow. That's not peanuts. That's great. That's a really cool story.
Congrats on that. It all started with that one Rolex. What was the Rolex again?
It was a Rolex Datejust. It was an old, beat up stainless steel Rolex.
Do you still have it?
No, I don't.
That's a shame. You should find that. Right? You should find that watch.
I upgraded it to another watch and another watch.
Of course.
Like usually
yeah,
do.
Sure. Yeah.
I didn't know I was going to be in the watch industry, right? I didn't know, because I would have framed that freaking thing by now.
Oh yeah, you someday that watch is going to find you, I think.
They produce 1 million Rolexes a year.
All right, fine. So I don't know. I'm an optimist. So your personal collection, you don't have to say like the value of it or anything like that, but what are some of your more favorite watches, or even like what's the watch that you love the most in your collection, or maybe the one that you wear the most?
I'm about to shock you guys. I don't own a single watch, while I own 1,000 watches. I'll explain.
Okay.
So for a while, I had a personal collection. I would buy this watch and put it away and keep it and buy it and put it away. Then I got into the world of social media. And what would happen every time I would put on a watch, a client would call and say, oh, Roman, I really want that watch. Well, it's my personal. Well, I'll find you another like it. He's like, no, I really want this watch. You'll find yourself another one. And I did that once, twice, 3 times, 10 times, 20 times. Mm-hmm. And the one watch in particular, which happens to be a watch from my favorite brand, it's Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, the original version from 1972. Gerald Genta, one of the greatest designers that ever lived, he designed the Royal Oak, he designed the Nautilus, he designed the King Midas Rolex, he designed a ton of very iconic things that live till today. He designed, literally overnight on a napkin, an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, which was inspired by a diver's helmet, which is why it has the screws. So I had the original 5402 stainless steel from 1972, one of the lowest serial numbers that were out there. And a client of mine said, okay, I want the watch. Now I paid 18 grand for that watch at one time. Yeah. I sold them for 20 something. I replaced it with a watch which now cost me 40. Another client took that one. I replaced that watch with a watch that now costs me 65. Another client took that watch. Now that market price on that watch is about 100 grand today. And I said, you know what? I'm done. I happen to be wearing right now the gold version of it. This is the gold 5402.
Okay. Beautiful watch.
Which is my favorite brand. But the idea, I said to myself, what am I doing? I can go downstairs to my vault. I can pick up any watch I want, and I can switch my watches 5 times a day and wear whatever I want, right? And then I don't have to run into this disappointment where I have to take my own personal thing off my wrist. It's like, if I came to you and said, give me your most prized possession card, sell it to me, and you'll find yourself another, right? And then you're thinking, well, what is it going to cost me now? And then how do I not piss off my good client? And how do I say no, right?
That's a great point. Yeah.
So I own a ton of watches, but I don't own any. The only thing in my personal collections is my wife's collection.
Okay. All right. All right.
Isn't everything we collect our wives?
Nobody's gonna take a watch off my wife's wrist, right? Like no client's gonna call me and say, "Oh, your wife was wearing that watch. Can you give it to me?"
Right. She protects.
They'll never do that.
That's a really smart strategy. I like that.
I like that. All right. This is where I'd like to get into how you can educate me and Nick and the audience. Can you talk to us around how we would get started? Like you mentioned at the beginning, like this is hard and it's difficult and there's a lot of rules and there's marketplaces and there's shipping and there's consigners like you and there's dealers and all this and there's probably even grading. How would we get started doing this?
Started as a watch collector.
Yeah.
As a watch
Yeah,
collector?
like
As a
what do you
watch
do?
collector.
What's step one?
So-
Walk into the
so-
local jewelry store or
So
what?
the most common question I get asked, and I get asked a million questions a day because I get a ton of DMs a day, and I actually answer my DMs, believe it or not.
Good.
Then the most common question I get asked is like, "Hey, listen, I have a particular budget, a range of a budget, right? And I'm a newbie. What watch would you recommend?"
Mm-hmm.
And that is the worst question you can ask a watch dealer because we're biased. I'm going to recommend the watch I want to sell you, right? Right? So my
Well,
answer to that,
we're
my
going to
answer,
ask those questions later, Roman. So
right?
just wait. We have those teed up
But it's
for
okay,
later.
which is perfectly fine. So I answer a question with a question. And how do I
Yeah.
do it? Tell people, look, I said,
Okay.
there are particular aspects of watch collecting that come into play. And there's not many of them.
Okay.
You have to sit down and figure out what sings to you, what's important to you.
Mhm.
The number one reason watches are being bought for today, what do you think it is?
I would say it's kind of like when you buy your first BMW, your first luxury good. Maybe it just
You're
makes
gonna
you
wanna say
happy.
status, right?
Yeah.
It's
Status.
right.
Yeah.
I call it what it is. I call it flex, right?
Flex,
The number
sure,
one reason
yeah.
you buy an expensive watch today is the flex factor, the show off factor.
Sure.
The very reason why I bought my first Rolex for $1,000 20 some years ago, right? And that is, and I tell my clients there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? If flex is your number one and only reason, then I'm gonna offer you some models that are popular, most recognizable, things that you walk into a club with, you roll up your sleeve and everybody knows.
Uh-huh.
Then there's other aspects to this, name and history, right? A lot of these brands, they have a lot of history. They date back 200 some years. Some have continuous history, some have revived history. And then, of course, last but not least, there's the horology aspect of it. This is what I love the most. For me, it's the mechanics, right? The horology.
What is that word, Roman? Sorry.
Horology.
Horology is like it's like the science of horology, like the
Okay.
science of watchmaking, right?
Very okay,
Okay.
cool. Sorry.
Cool.
So mechanics, let's dumb it down a little bit. So
Yeah.
mechanics, right? How complicated are the watches? What can they actually do? You do realize that, yeah, while the watch I'm wearing only tells you the day, I'm sorry, the hour, the minutes, and the date.
Mhm.
There are watches out there that are full perpetual calendars that will tell you the date, the hour, the minutes, the seconds, what month it is, what year it is, and whether it's a leap year or not. And it's all done mechanically. There's no computer in there, right?
That's
There are other
cool.
complications like minute repeaters, watches double chime out the time. There's complications that are combined together, stopwatches, chronographs, world time functionalities, right? A lot of people, myself included, being from an engineering background, that's what sings to me. I go after high horology, right? Or high mechanics,
Yeah.
right? Or sometimes it can be a combination of things. So we're talking about flex, we're talking about history, we're talking about brand names, right? Which is the history of the brand. And we're talking about the mechanics that's inside the watch. Once you figure that out and say, hey, this is what's most important to me, then you can say, okay, now I have a budget. And you go within that budget, you buy what you like within the means that you can afford.
All
That's
right.
where you get started.
Okay.
But the idea, like in any industry, any collecting, is to educate yourself. Because if you don't, you're going to make mistakes.
Mhm.
I sure as hell did it with cards as of late. Trust me when I tell you.
Sure.
Haven't we all? Haven't we all?
All right. So definitely, we need to understand the purpose of us getting into this. Is there good resources? Is your YouTube page a good resource to learn about the dealers to use, or the shipping issues you're talking about, and how to learn how to trust certain individuals?
It's a very simple process, right?
Yeah.
When I was first starting out, I was still working out of my basement as I was for the first 3 years of my business. The beauty about this business is I sell expensive things, so I get to usually meet people that are pretty well off, people that are educated, people that are successful, right? That buy these type of toys. And I met a marketing guru, and we're going back to the time where you still had the seminars, and then you would sell the 6 CD sets with all your lessons in it. You know what I'm talking about? Do you
Okay.
remember?
Yep.
You guys
Oh, yeah.
old enough to remember those.
Oh,
So
we do, yeah.
this gentleman taught me one thing. He said, Roman, I'm going to give you one hint when it comes to marketing, and I want you to remember it for the rest of your career. I was a young kid, and he goes to me, you have to educate your consumer first and foremost to a point where they would feel stupid to buy anywhere else but you, regardless of price, within reason, right? And that stuck with me the whole time. So ever since before social media, that's all I've ever done is I've educated my consumer. Nobody's ever been sold a watch. They purchased the watch. And I then translate that on to all of my salespeople, my entire sales department. Education is key. When social media came out, it gave us a platform to be able to educate. So
Yeah.
on my YouTube channel, you go back to my old archives where I talk about every watch under the sun. On my Instagram, you go to my Instagram. I also always I produce this thing called Sharf Tank, like Shark Tank, but my
Yeah.
last name, right?
Yeah.
Where I quickly give you some facts about watches. And even like my private club on my Instagram, when you go in there, I put forth like 5, 10 watches as a deal to my followers if
Mm.
they're part of that club. I don't just say, hey, this watch used to be $10, now it's $9. No, I tell them about the watch, I tell them about the history, I tell them why I like it, and then I give them a better price, right?
Nice.
So there are plenty of resources out there. You can check my YouTube channel. You can check our publication, which is the Gray Market Magazine. But we're not the only game in town. There are plenty of other YouTubers out there. But what it all boils down to is when it comes to buying watches, you don't buy the watch. You buy the dealer, not the
Ooh,
watch
interesting.
because it's a product that a multitude of people can have. So what you do is you look for things like reputation, return policy, right? I'm one of the first guys to start selling watches online, right? So
Yeah.
my reputation goes back 22 years. You look at things like, oh, what's my return policy? 7 days, no questions asked. Hey, references, reviews, all those things would allow today's day and age. AI can tell you who's a good dealer to do business with.
Right.
Ask ChatGPT kind of thing, right?
Mm.
But again, you're buying the dealer, not the watch. You want to have recourse, which for consumer, that means return policy, acceptance of credit cards where you have recourse as well, right? And read the reviews. And then also you can ask around. The watch world, if you think about the card world, it's huge, right?
Yeah.
When you think about the watch world, it's probably 1% of that, right? It's
Really?
a very, very small world, which is why reputation is everything in our industry, because if you don't have that, you're screwed because it's such a small world. Everybody talks.
Yeah, you make up great points. I remember, so I'm holding up, this is the only nice watch I sort of nice watch. It's a Breitling. And I was really nervous, like I didn't want to buy it online. And I just kind of walked into the local, jeweler and was just like, "Hey, what's up?" And we just kind of figured out something that looked good and felt good and then I liked it, but I didn't realize, all the resources that were out there. So it's
That's a
very
problem
interesting.
I dealt with for the first 10 years of my career. The number one thing I had to convince my customers of is the fact that I'm not going to send them a brick in a box. Mind you,
Yeah,
I came in when e-commerce was just being born. Today, I don't have that.
exactly.
I don't have that problem because of the reputation that we created, and
Yeah.
because you can Google my name and go online, and well, you also now going to see the Russian oligarch that bought Trump sneakers. I don't know if you guys saw that story.
No, I
But
No.
didn't.
Google it after the podcast.
Okay.
It was a
Okay.
shit show for 2 weeks.
All
I,
right.
I bought a pair of Trump signed sneakers at an event because my son is in the sneaker business. It made it onto Twitter and it blew up. And for 2 weeks, my phones didn't stop ringing. I had guys from Japan that flew in to do an interview with me. 9 grand
Wow.
for about $9 million worth of publicity. So it
All
was great.
right.
Wow.
Rock and
And I
roll.
got to meet the president with my son because of it. So it's great.
Did you?
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's a whole different podcast.
Oh
Okay, okay.
man.
Yeah.
All
Crazy.
right.
All right. We got a
I'll be
little
back with that story.
awesome.
Yes,
We
please.
we got a little rapid fire game here.
All right.
All right. So the goal is I don't know, we'll call me a 24-year-old dude that's got a little bit of money. All right. We're gonna do 3 tiers of money. My goal is to flex. I want to pick up chicks at the club or the bar or whatever. I want to look really cool. All right. Tier one, I've got $1,000 to spend. What do I do?
You're gonna buy it to sew PRX.
So
Okay.
It's
PRX.
got the look and feel of a Nautilus of a Royal Oak without breaking the bank, and it's a good looking sporty watch, and it will still attract attention.
Okay.
Interesting. This is great. Like if my son wants to save up for a watch, so that's helpful. All right, that's 1,000. You got 100 grand. You got a nice bonus. And you want to really look good. Again, you're single. You want to just flex a little bit. $100,000 watch.
$100,000 watch, you're buying yourself either a Royal Oak chronograph in rose gold, or you're buying yourself a Nautilus in stainless steel, preferably a 5990. Two of the
Wow.
most recognizable shapes or of a watch out there. Unmistakably, you look at a watch on the wrist, like this is 50 years old, and you
Yeah.
can still from afar tell that this is an AP Royal Oak because they all look the same over the last 50
Hmm.
years.
Excellent.
Okay.
All right, last tier. $1 million. You got $1 million. Just got $1 million bonus. What kind of watch?
You got $1 million bonus. It really depends on how hard you want to flex, but if you want to
You want to
flex
flex it all. You want to
if you
flex
want
all
to flex
million.
really hard, you're gonna go with a Jacob and Co. that's flooded with baguette diamonds, right?
Ooh.
If you want to flex from a horological perspective, you buying yourself a really high-end Patek Philippe, which is usually either a minute repeater, a tourbillon, a combination of, or a combination of other complications from Patek Philippe.
All right. Now, before
Okay.
LZ's got another question there. What is a minute repeater? I just want to know what that is.
A minute repeater it chimes out the time, right? It's a watch that usually comes with. I mean, I should have. Do I have one here? Hold on.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, I don't have one here, but I do
I
have
don't
this.
know what it
But
is.
what
I
it
have
is,
no idea.
it's a watch. You'll notice there's a lever on the side of the watch, and as you depress that lever, it will chime out the time that the watch is showing. So it will chime out the hours, the quarter hours, and
Oh,
if you set
gotcha.
the if you let's say you set the watch like to get it to chime the most, you set it to like 11:58. It will
Yeah.
chime out the hour 11 times. It will chime out the quarter hour
Oh,
3 times, and
that's
it will
clever.
chime out the minutes 9 times.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So
Wow. All right.
originally it was created for to be able to tell time in the dark. It was there was a purpose behind everything that was created with a watch, and obviously it was
Hmm.
all these creations come from pocket watches. So back in the day, when you're sitting in the dark in the back of your carriage and you don't know what time it is, you depress that lever and it tells you.
Love it.
Okay. All right. All right. Different set of questions here now. We're no longer flexing. We're more collecting. And first up,
Collecting
and I'm
for what
thinking of
purpose? Collecting for
um
what purpose?
collecting to kind of build wealth within watches, right? Build a collection that over time is going to be worth some money.
And likely
Maybe
hand down to your kids, right? Or
yeah,
something like that.
hand it down. Maybe once in a while you're selling one, but you want to have a collection that kind of stays in the family, and over time it's worth 5 million, $10 million, or what have you. Okay. All right. First one, and I'm thinking of this from collecting cards, and I know you're into cards a bit too. What are the Mickey Mantles, Michael Jordans of watches? These kind of blue chip watches that aren't going to necessarily skyrocket in price, but they're just going to be a steady, solid investment.
I'm gonna flip the script on you, and I'm gonna tell you that when it comes to watches,
Mm-hmm.
it's picking up the type of watches that are so rare to where it becomes kind of like a name your price thing within reason, right?
Ooh,
I had
okay.
a client that walked in here, uh, and he was selling us $3 million worth of watches. He almost happens. He found out that I'm a card collector. I collect Formula One cards. He
Hmm.
found out that I'm an avid Formula One card collector, and he said, "I'm going to bring you a few cards to show you." The first thing he pulled out of his box was a Mickey Mantle, 1951 SGC 9.5.
Oh, okay.
Ooh,
This is what he came out of the gate with. Never mind all or never
9.5.
mind all the other baseball cards that he had, like the
Wow.
Wagner, the Babe Ruths, and all that stuff. This is the first card he pulled out. Now we know today's market value based on some recent sales, an SGC 9.5, it's a $10 million card.
Yep.
Would you agree, more or less?
Sure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Mm-hmm.
Can he ask 15 for it if somebody wants it?
Potentially, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. If
Yeah.
someone
Yeah. It
wants it,
depends on
why
how
not?
bad the other person
Why?
wants it.
Because he can tell you, good luck getting one. Go
Mhm.
find
Yeah.
another,
Yeah.
right? Was
Mhm.
it the PSA 9 that sold for 12 and a half? I think it was,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
he can pull that card out and simply say, an SGC 9.5 is about a PSA 9, would you say? Maybe 8.5, right?
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
You
Pretty
know, so
close.
the card is
Yeah.
definitely worth 8, not 10 million, 10 million
Sure.
bucks. But he
Hmm.
can ask 18 million for it. And the reason he can ask
Mm.
18 million for it, because unless you go into an auction environment, one pops up, and the population being one, what are you going to do? Same
Yep.
translates into watches more or less. And it usually translates on the higher end of things, but it doesn't have to. On the higher end of things, you're going to have vintage Patek Philippe's, you're going to have vintage Rolexes. Patek Rolex are the most collectible and the most high value pieces out there that fetch buku dollars in auctions. Your Paul
Huh.
Newman Daytonas, your perpetual calendar Patek Philippe's. There's a stainless steel
Yeah.
Patek Philippe 1518 that's going to go on the block, which is a one-off watch. It was made in stainless. The rest were made in rose gold and yellow gold, right? Well, there's a stainless steel one going up in auction. That watch can go for anywhere from 10 to 20 to even $30 million. It's the
Ooh,
only one in the world. And whoever
Wow.
buys it, let's say they pay $20 million for it. If
hmm
they turn around and they want to put it to market, you go in auction, you're taking a chance. But if there's a collector out there, and most of these collector money is no object, that must have that watch,
Yep.
and you bought it in auction yesterday for $20 million, you can tell them 25. You
Fascinating.
want it? As long as you're in a position where the pieces that you're buying, you can afford to hold them. You have
Yeah.
the meaning that you didn't buy them to flip them and you need that money back, right?
Right.
If you're using expandable income to put money into these things and are able to sit on them, and if your purpose is to resell them for a higher number, you want to buy things where you can name your price because nobody else has it, right? But that's
hmm
really high end stuff. But there's
Okay.
plenty of other stuff out there, right? There's
Hmm.
stuff out there what I like to call sleepers, mostly in the neo vintage world, right? Things that are
Okay.
like 25 to 30 years old, right? This is where you can identify and do really a lot of digging and a lot of research to say, look, not a lot of these were produced. When it comes to Rolex, they produce millions of watches. But what you want to go for is you want to go for the oddball stuff, maybe something that has an odd dial, or something that was only produced for a year, so you know the numbers are lower. Anybody tells you that how many were made, they're lying to you. Nobody knows, and Rolex won't tell you. So you go for
Oh.
things that are either oddball where productions were less, or sometimes you have a chance you can buy a limited edition. Now, Rolex doesn't make limited editions. Patek Philippe rarely makes limited editions. Audemars Piguet does. So you look at things and you say, okay, this looks like a nice limited edition. They made very few of them. Production was low. I think this might be a good bet in the future. But it is exactly that. It's a bet, meaning that trends change, markets change, a lot of things change. And what you think might be a future collectible may not be. So the sure bet is to go backwards and buy vintage at a reasonable price and hold it long term, because vintage has already proved itself. Right?
Me and Nick are
same
smiling.
shit
Yeah,
as
man.
as you see in the card world.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
1951 or a 52 model,
Still going strong.
You can literally probably spit off a price for every single grade of that card to me right now, right?
Sure.
And they just
it's
consistently go up over time.
with sports, the gambling aspect, with sports cards, the gambling aspect is a bit higher because the player has to perform, right?
Right.
But a player that's already been proven, a card that has been proven on the market, that's what you go for. The difference is you're going to pay top dollar for a top example every single time today. What that example will be in the future, don't expect a growth of double, triple, quadruple. It's going to be a slow and steady growth as it has been, as I have seen, let's say, with the Manos.
Okay.
All right.
You mentioned at one point when you were rattling off the really high end ones that you should look for is the Paul Newman, and it reminded me of the recent Sotheby's auction by Tom Brady. Where I'm sure you were probably.
I was there. I actually did a video previewing the auction. I held all those watches in my hand.
You were there? Were you there the night of the auction?
I didn't go. I went there the day before to do a video.
Oh, I was there
that's
that
right.
night.
I watched that video.
I was there. Oh,
I actually happened to go visit the room where the banana was that sold for $6 million.
No, God. Yeah. So that's great. You got to, so you held that Paul Newman watch?
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing went for $1 million plus, right? I don't remember the exact, but how did you feel about that price?
I felt I didn't like the watch itself too much. I didn't like the watch, because with these things, it's all about condition. We don't have PSA grading in the watch world, but we have our own eyes. And I felt the condition on that watch wasn't bad, but it wasn't the best.
Huh. Okay.
I was more excited about the Audemars Piguet, but then again, I'm biased. That's my favorite brand.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So back to the game. All right. So we covered the GOATs. What are the hot rookie watches, the up and coming brands, if there are any new brands that maybe we should be paying attention to?
There's no such thing as rookie cards, but there are such things as independent watchmakers, right?
Okay.
Rookie cards you can equate to independent watchmakers. What defines an independent watchmaker is usually somebody that started around the year 2000, so around 20 years old at a maximum. Small production, everything is done in-house, right? Design, production, creation, the watchmaking itself. This is where you're usually going to find most innovation within the watch industry, because look, a watch is like a gun, right? When Browning made his guns back in early 1900s, the gun systems haven't changed. The pistol works the same for the last 100 years. Same goes for watches. It's very hard to innovate within the within the world of watches. So what these independents do is they push the envelope on design, and they push the envelopes on high-end watchmaking itself, meaning the quality of the watchmaking and innovation, again, horologically. So you look at some of these independents, they also thrive on another thing, the fact that they're ungettable. The fact that there's a 5 to 6, 7 year waiting list for them because the production numbers are very small. Put it in perspective, my favorite brand, Audemars Piguet, produces about 60,000 watches a year. In comparison to Rolex, that's nothing. They do 1 million watches a year. Well, some independents produce 20 to 30 watches a year, right? So they become that ungettable, right? And the prices skyrocket. One of my favorite independents out there, a guy I met personally, he's a really nice guy. His name is Recepi, if you can say that fast 5 times. He's a plain watch that tells only time, retails for $60,000. The last one fetched $800,000 in auction.
Ooh.
See?
Because it's such limited edition.
Yeah. So to get into those rookies, what you want to do is you want to get early access to one of these up and coming young watchmakers coming out of school, the talented ones, the ones that receive the prizes. GPHD is the Grammys of the watch world every year, right? And these kids, they get these prizes. Also, another the best and the most popular independent watchmaker, Francois Paul Journe, gives out his own award. But the problem is behind those guys, the minute they get those awards, there's going to be guys like me and say, "Here's a check for $4 million, whatever."
Right.
I want.
This is
right?
wild.
It's
I mean,
very
this
difficult.
ecosystem here, like now you're like, it's almost like you're like watching the Oscars and you're like
I
betting
told
on
you,
somebody to hit Best
I
Actress.
told you, bulletproof underwear and sense of humor. It's one of those things where it's unless you are in this space, right? Unless you are in the space and you become friendly with some of these young watchmakers, you're consistently in the space, and which means you're in Switzerland, right? And you're constantly hanging out in all the places where all the watch guys are, and you create a relationship with these guys, right? Then you can go to them and say, "Well, make me a watch." But the caveat is that you can never sell that watch. Ricep owners to whom he sold the watches personally to, if they ever sold that watch, that's it, they're done. That means they're in it for the money, not for the love of the watchmaker. Those guys paid 60 grand for that watch, you know? And so unless you're in that space, unless you have a relationship with these people, there's something about you that could be a humongous benefit to them, like let's say if you're Michael Jordan, right? It's very difficult to get early access to those rookie cars or rookie watches, as you mentioned, because odds are there's a line of guys out there with big
Oh,
wallets that want to do it for the purpose of
So
making money.
crazy. Very cool.
yeah. I mean, I guess it does happen a bit in cards, but not to that extreme, right? With these
I
forums.
think this could be compared to is having a relationship with some young and up and coming players to get the memorabilia, the game one
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's what.
There
But
you
then
go.
again, you're
Hmm.
competing with the card companies that want to buy their game worn shit and make cards out of them, right? So
Yeah.
it's like if you have a relationship with a rookie, if you knew this kid in college, right, and he came out of college and he became a phenom and a great football, basketball, whatever player or baseball
Hmm.
player, but you've known the kid and say, bro, let me have your last college championship jersey, like the one that Brady sold off, by the way, at that auction. Then you have a relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's but to get in there, like it's like saying, okay, I'm gonna get access to Michael Jordan when he was a rookie in college. It's like it's
It's
not
tough.
feasible.
Yeah, it just had to
Yeah, it
happen
is hard.
organically. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I guess the last one, you might have already covered it. So I had three questions kind of with this game that we're playing here. And the last one was like, and I know you're going to say it depends, but maybe you can give us three or two at least. Like every man should have this watch. Like what is like the standard, like this is just a solid watch, somewhat affordable that every man should have.
A Rolex,
Okay.
specifically a Rolex Submariner. You go into any major city around the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? And let's say you're in a specific area that where people hang out that are professionals, have a little bit of money,
Mm-hmm.
like say Wall Street, and you throw a rock in the air, odds are you'll hit a Submariner, right?
Okay.
It's the most recognizable, one of the most popular watches. The most popular and most desired watches would be the Rolex Daytona. But the Rolex Submariner is a great watch to own. Number one, it can take a beating. These things, you can throw them against the wall. You can do whatever the hell you want with them. They'll take a beating and they'll keep on ticking. It's a very
Nice.
reliable watch. So Rolex Daytona is something you should always have. Now, if you have a bit of a bigger budget and you want to have a watch that's a dress, because really you have sports watches, you have dress watches, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if you want to have a dressier watch, you obviously want to have a Patek Philippe because Patek Philippe is the Rolls Royce of all watches, right? That's the biggest name. That is the name to have. And
Okay.
you don't have to spend buku dollars on a Patek Philippe. You can buy a nice Calatrava under $20,000, which would be a nice gold plain watch with
Oh,
a strap.
okay.
So dress watch, sports watch, and then it all depends on, are you single? Are you married? What are you trying to achieve,
Right,
right?
right, right, right,
You
right.
Mm-hmm.
know, so it's I wanted a Rolex as a flex when I was a young kid and I wasn't married, and it had its effect at a club, as you will, right?
Sure.
But now that I'm almost 50 and I'm married with three children, I'm not trying, I don't need that effect, right?
Right,
So I
right.
just
No.
wear what I like. I like conversation pieces, right? And a conversation piece is also another thing that a Rolex Submariner is not a conversation piece. A Patek Philippe is not a conversation piece. But your
Okay.
third piece, as you get into your collection, should be a conversation piece. Whether it's something really cool from an independent watchmaker, whether it's a vintage timepiece that has a story behind it, right? There's a lot of things out there that have a cool story behind it, and that's what we call conversation pieces. A Rolex will get you into a door, you'll grab attention. A Patek Philippe, you'll also grab attention in certain respect because it is a Patek Philippe. But a conversation piece will take you a long way, so long as you know what you have on your wrist. So that's just it, and it's very vague. Conversation piece can be super vague because it can
I
come from
love that.
multiple things.
Awesome.
Very
So,
cool.
Just kicking it back to cards real quick. We've talked about watches a lot, but we've compared them to the card market. You actually told me when I reached out to you that you're a pretty avid F1 card collector. How long have you been collecting F1 cards and kind of what's the stuff you like? What's
So I
the
heavily got into Formula One cars when they started making modern cars. Now I have cars dating back to the 60s and the 70s. I have older cars. I have the Fangios and I have the Ferrari cars and the Maserati cars, right? And but it wasn't really a thing until they kicked it off in 20, when Topps kicked it off back in 2020, right? I also happen to have a collection of 91 Michael Schumacher rookies from the 1992 grid set, right? For his 91 wins, right? I'm creating a
Mhm.
project and they're all PSA 10s, right? Now, when Topps came into the game, a card is not a card until the majors start to print them, right? So when
Yep.
they came into the game in 2020, that's when I got into it a little heavier because I felt there was a lot of value there. But I also realized that the market was going crazy as it was with everything else. So I didn't really start buying until we experienced a dip 2 years ago. That's when I said, okay, now they're 50 to 60% cheaper. Now there's a lot of value there. Let's go in. And I strictly looked at the rookie year, which is the 2020, where, hey, every 2020 card is a rookie. Uh, Imagine having an opportunity to buy a Tom Brady rookie card 12 years into him playing. That's a Lewis Hamilton 2020 Chrome card, a Dynasty card, or any other card, right?
Yep.
Mhm.
So I saw an opportunity there because I look at collecting from two lenses. Number one is the passion. I absolutely love the sport. It is my favorite sport. Uh, there's nothing like Formula One. Okay.
No.
It's the
Mhm.
only sport where you have 10 teams that compete against each other and then the teammates compete against each other. It's a combination of technology, engineering, performance, athleticism. So to me, it's absolutely, I can talk about Formula One forever as to
What do
why.
you think about Hamilton going to Ferrari? What are
I'm
your
so
thoughts?
fucking torn that you have no idea. I'm a Mercedes fan. You have no idea what this does to me. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll turn my camera. I'll show you all the Mercedes stuff I have around my office. I am. I'm not. I don't even want to talk about that. I'm like.
Yeah.
I'm gonna. I know I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna probably don a Ferrari jersey at some point because I love Lewis
Mm,
Hamilton. But man, bad. It's
big
a sore
change.
subject. There you go.
Yeah.
But to go back to Formula Card, I'm one of those guys that consciously understands that I'm going to have an amount of money vested into a hobby, right? And like anybody else, you make your rookie mistakes, you join some breaks, you gamble, you this, that, and the other, you realize I spent way too much money, right? You overbuy, then you get rid of stuff that you don't want and at a loss usually, right?
Mhm.
And but you learn a lesson kind of thing. A lot of people do the same thing with watches. But I realized that I need to concentrate on a few things that I feel are important, that are going to have value down the road. And I also learned not to be married to certain things. If I bought a card for $40,000 and somebody offers me 80, it's reasonable to sell it unless I absolutely must keep it, right? I'm one of those guys. You have collectors that are into rookie cards. You have collectors that are into specific patch cards. You have collectors that are into various things. I'm a set collector or set builder. So for me, I took on a daunting task of building the entire 2020 Chrome set in PSA 10. And if you know
Awesome.
anything about that set, when
Yeah.
it was printed with a dimple. And to get any of the numbered cards that was numbered out of something, it is next
Okay.
to impossible to get a PSA 10. Out of the 200 some cards in that set, I have probably out of the reds, which is out of five, I have like four reds that are out of five, and I'm the only one in the world that has them
That's
because
awesome.
everything
That
else
has that has tens.
has
What,
a 10. This is
where are you
great.
at with
Nice.
the non-reds in that set? Like, how's your progress?
Where am I at
Yeah,
with?
you said you wanted to get the entire set in PSA 10.
Yeah, I am. So I finished. I'm three cards away from a refractor set. I have the base set. There's also a lot of autos, right? So I'm the
Yep.
only one in the world. Me and a golfer by the name of Ian Poulter. I don't know if you heard him. He was also an
Mhm.
avid Formula One
Yep.
collector.
Hmm.
Me and him are the only two people in the world that have a full set of the orange autographs out of 25, and this is like
Sick.
58 cards. I have the full silver auto set. I have the full gold wave set, which is out of 50. And I have the orange one. The reds is impossible. And a major driver with a red auto, it's 80 grand plus per card. Because remember, there's only
Sick.
20 of them, right? 20 drivers. So, um, and I'm slowly chugging away at it.
Mhm.
And listen, I'm more than halfway through. And then on the side, there's also things like fun things.
Yep.
1992 grid set, which is a cool Formula One set. Those cards in a PSA 10, if you find them, because people don't grade them, can be $100. They're nothing. But to me,
Mhm.
it's sort of an iconic thing. That's also Michael Schumacher's rookie year, and he was one of my
Oh,
favorite drivers as
nice.
well.
Hmm.
So I take the approach of saying, okay, I have an amount of money sitting here. I don't want it to exceed X. If it does, I need to take some chips off the tables. And I also do things to hedge myself. How do I hedge it? Sealed cases. I have 5 sealed Chrome 2020 cases sitting in my safe.
There we go.
At break
How do
value,
you not open them though, man? It's hard.
well, you know what I did? I put them on the top shelf, and I told my if you ever find me climbing up
Grab
on
my
the
ankle
shelf and grabbing those boxes, you need to stop me, right?
LZ and I always joke, I can't buy any unsealed wax because I just open it. So if I ever did, I got to like give it to him to lock somewhere, and I can't have the
That's what
code.
I did. I locked them up. It's a nice hedge to have because as the cards go up in value, so will the cases. And number of collectors out there that just can't find a particular card to finish their set, which I'm one of those guys that I want to take a gamble to open those cases. So, I've seen those cases go as high as $30,000 in auction today at break value. They're about 26, 27. Realistically, they're about 22, $23,000. I think I paid 18 per case at one time. So having those 5 cases is a bit of a hedge as well.
Yeah.
Right. And I know what's going to happen. I'm going to get to the ass end of my set, and there's not going to be any boxes of wax available out
Ripping
there.
them open, baby.
You're going to need it.
I'm
You're
going
going
to
to
be
need
the guy that's going to rip them open. But at the same token, if they get to about 50 grand a case, 5 cases,
You open it, you're like, ouch, ouch,
I'll take
ouch.
the money.
Do the math. Do the math.
Oh.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Hey, thank you for the time. We're going to get to our last question. All right, because we want to be respectful of your time. So we have a question of the day. Question of the day today is for all 3 of us. What is your favorite watch that was featured in a movie? And Roman, like, we will give you a bit of time because obviously with this one, me and Nick did research. Usually this is like a random question and we don't do research. We will go first. We'll give you a minute to kind of think about what watch was featured in a movie.
Okay.
All right. Nick, do you want to go first?
Sure. Why not? I got mine right off the bat.
Okay.
I don't know. Roman, have you seen Pulp Fiction?
Yes.
Okay. So Pulp Fiction's got this.
Pulp Fiction.
Hey, I'm just making sure. Just making sure. So Christopher Walken, he's amazing, right? He's got this scene in Pulp Fiction where he hands the watch to it's a World War II trench watch. It's a Lancet, I believe. I think it's a fictional watch, but he hands that watch down to a young Bruce Willis. Basically says like, your grandfather had this like in his ass and he had dysentery, and then he hands him the watch.
And Christopher Walken did as well. He had it in up his rear end.
Yeah,
too,
he also carried the watch in his ass, handed it to Bruce Willis, and then Bruce Willis wears it for most of the movie, but he leaves it. I mean, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Pulp Fiction, he leaves it behind somewhere and has to go get it, and he's really pissed about it. So that's my scene. I thought it was hilarious.
Okay, Larry.
Okay, mine is, so I did research for this. James Bond always has great watches. So I did some research. I'm like, what were the best James Bond watches? Well, there's plenty of watches, Roman. I might not have chose yours. All right, so my favorite is in the movie Diamonds Are Forever, 1971. It is a Rolex pre-Daytona chronograph, and I'm gonna put it on the screen, Roman. That is like my style right there. I love watches that look like that. So for the audience,
I have one in gold downstairs.
Do you? Oh, of course
I
you
have
do.
the gold version.
Of course you do. It's just a beautiful silver face watch. It's chronograph. It's got 3 different dials on it. It's got a nice leather strap. It's
really classic.
beautiful.
It definitely suits you.
Beautiful.
I can see you wearing that.
So for me, it comes back to the reason as to why, right? It's the same thing we started this podcast with, is that why do you want to buy a watch? What are some of the reasons? What sings to you in order to have that watch? And you just said that, like, this is you. This is like, you like the way that watch looks, so it sings to you. For a guy who's not only a watch collector and lover, but also a watch dealer, it also comes down to what may have that watch done for the watch industry. For example, you look at a guy like Sylvester Stallone. If it wasn't for Sylvester Stallone, Panerai as the brand wouldn't be as successful as today. Movie Daylight, he wore a PAM 186, right? If you look at Arnold Schwarzenegger, probably one of the best ambassadors for my favorite brand, Audemars Piguet. He had plenty of watch movies. Terminator 3, End of Days. The 6-day AP. He wore APs in every single one of those movies. Let's look at a cool factor. Let's look at Iron Man. Okay, Robert Downey Jr. wore an Airwork watch, one of my favorite independents that doesn't even look like a watch. It looks like it's something out of space, and it was a perfect match to him as Iron Man. Believe it or not, I owned that very watch at one time. We sold it for $167,000, the very watch that he owned and wore in the movie.
That's
The
So
one that he actually wore.
the one that it said Robert
Whoa.
Downey
dude,
Jr.
that's
on the case,
wild.
right?
Talk about a story. That's great. There's a story
So
right
so
there.
it's very difficult to say, hey, but I'm also a big James Bond fan, right?
Yeah.
And to me, while people pick the Rolexes that he wore, for
Mhm.
me, a James Bond will forever be associated with Omega, right? I
Okay.
like the newer James Bond movies, right? So
Yep.
from a personal perspective, I'm going to go James Bond Omega. But for what some of these movies and some of these watches worn in these movies, what they have done for the industry, and
Mhm.
continues to today, what celebrities or high profile individuals do for the industry. I'm sure you guys watch the Super Bowl where my beloved Eagles kick Kansas City's ass. And boy, did we kick their ass. And boy, am I
Yes, you did.
the adrenaline is still wearing
And
off.
you have a
The
Breitling
parade, the
Philadelphia
parade
Eagles
is today.
watch.
The parade is today, right?
Oh,
But
you gonna go?
no, it's
No.
Philadelphia, brother.
No.
No.
You want to
Have you
go
seen
with
what happens during parades in Philadelphia?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, we know.
I'll watch it on TV.
Yeah.
So if you
Mhm.
look at from perspective of high profile individuals, Tom Brady, the talk of the town about Tom Brady, and I watched the whole thing. They started the pregame show at like 1 o'clock,
Mhm.
or 3 different Jacob and Co. watches. I got 45 phone calls for the one watch that he wore. It was a Jacob and Co. Caviar Tourbillon. It was all yellow baguette diamonds, this huge thing.
Yes. Okay.
Like, actually, I'll show you. I think I have it here. One second.
Yeah, everybody was talking about that one. I also saw another one. I think it was during
Well, guess
pregame or
what?
something.
I'm getting ready to sell that watch
Yeah.
because I had so many calls on it that I reached out and I found the watch, and I'm getting ready to sell it to one of 3 customers, whoever basically comes first. Where the hell is this picture?
What
But
is that? What is that watch worth, Roman?
that watch retails for $740,000.
Oh,
But it's
okay,
not as
cool.
it's
So a
not as
really, really
expensive.
nice house.
But it's not. It's also not the most expensive he wore for Jacob. He also earlier on wore the Jacob Billionaire. That's a $6 million watch. It's all
Was
white
that the
baguette.
silver one with like just diamonds all over it?
It's just all baguette diamonds.
Yeah. Yep.
And then
It's how many diamonds you can squeeze
he
on
also
it.
wore the Bugatti watch. But so it just goes back to what I was trying to tell you earlier
Wow.
is, for somebody who's a consumer like yourself that's looking at particular watches, it's very easy to pinpoint to one watch based on the fact that you just like the watch, it's your style, and so on and so forth. For somebody like me, it's extremely difficult because there have been so many watches and so many movies. There have been so many watches that were given a spotlight by a celebrity, a movie star, if you will. And it's what it did for the company, as far as I'm concerned, and what really sings to me. Because, like I said, if it wasn't for Sylvester Stallone, I don't know how popular Panerai would be. If it wasn't for Arnold Schwarzenegger, I don't know how well the limited offshores would take off from AP.
Wild.
Yeah.
Crazy.
That's
All right.
cool.
We're going to close this down. Roman, I want to give you a chance. If somebody's got a watch question, or maybe they're looking for a super high-end watch and they're listening or whatever, what's the best way to get in touch with you or
Well,
find
you
you
can go
guys?
to our website, which is luxurybazaar.com,
Mhm.
or you just Google my name, Roman Sharf. All my socials will come up. I'm Roman Sharf on IG. I'm Roman Sharf on
All right.
YouTube. I'm Roman Sharf on all my socials, and I do answer my DMs. I'm not telling you I answer them instantly, but I do have a system in place, and I use a CRM system to be able to answer my DMs efficiently and weed out all
Oh,
oh, hi, you're kind of cute, or would you like to grow your social media
yeah,
profile?
yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah.
So,
I need to take advice from you.
Sure. You need a
Awesome.
CRM, Nick.
Oh,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, seriously. That's great. Thank you. It's super helpful for me, just to get like an understanding of everything. So thanks for, helping us like walk through this watch world. Definitely
I'll leave
appreciate
you
it.
with this. When you decide to buy your watch, I'll tell you what you shouldn't buy. And
Okay.
that's the kind of dealer you want to look for.
I
And I
like it.
won't do that based on my own, I won't do that based on my own knowledge or my own experience. I'll do it based on a conversation I have with you. Because once
I
I
love
see
that.
what sings to you, like for example, you really like that steel pre-Daytona. I
Yeah.
would let you buy that one. There's a better one out there that holds better value, that's more popular. It may be a little bit of more money, but it's a better buy, right? Just as
Okay.
an example. So
We are
that
coming
won't
to
tell
you,
you
my
Yeah.
friend.
Yep. Yes, we are.
but at the end, remember, you buy what you like first and
Yeah.
foremost, within the means that you can afford.
Collect what you like,
Mhm.
buy what you like.
Right.
Sort of a
That's
theme
it.
here.
Yeah.
Roman, thank you. Thanks so much. This is great.
Of course.
Thanks, Roman.